Caleb Brooks started most mornings before the sun had enough courage to touch the rooftops. The city was still half asleep, wrapped in blue-gray light, when he stood at the small kitchen counter of his apartment and folded a napkin around Naomi's sandwich like it mattered. Peanut butter on one side. Strawberry jam on the other. Crusts left on, because Naomi said she was too old for baby sandwiches now, even though she still slept with a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. The radiator clicked in the corner. Coffee breathed in the old machine. Caleb's work jacket hung over the back of a chair, the sleeves darkened by years of oil, rain, and honest labor. On the table sat Naomi's school backpack, purple with a broken zipper he had fixed twice with wire and patience. Beside it was a permission slip for the district science fair, folded carefully under a magnet shaped like a sunflower. The fee was due by 5. Caleb looked at the number printed on the page, then at the small roll of cash in his palm. Rent had taken most of it. Groceries had taken the rest. He did the math without moving his lips. Then he slid $2 back into the coffee tin and packed Naomi's lunch. She came out wearing mismatched socks and carrying a cardboard solar system with Saturn hanging crooked from a piece of thread. "Daddy, if we can't pay today, I can just bring it next year," she said, too casual. Caleb turned, studied her face, and saw the little performance children learn when they love a tired parent. He smiled softly. "You let me worry about grown-up numbers," he said. "You just keep building planets." Naomi looked down, hiding a smile. He kissed the top of her head, grabbed his keys from the hook, and slipped a small dented tin box into his jacket pocket before they left. The box had once held peppermints. Now it held odd screws, washers, tiny sensors, and one brass-colored connector wrapped in a scrap of cloth. Naomi had asked about it once. Caleb had only said, "Some things are small until the right moment." By noon, he was at Vale Prestige Motors, the kind of showroom that smelled less like cars and more like money pretending not to sweat. Glass walls. White floors. Men in fitted suits walking softly around machines worth more than houses. Caleb was not supposed to be out front. He had been hired for weekend overflow work, oil changes, tire checks, cleanup after the certified technicians were done. Preston Vale made that clear every chance he got. "Brooks," Preston called from across the service bay, not looking up from his tablet. "Customer area is not your stage." Caleb wiped his hands on a gray rag and stepped back from the polished doorway. He had only paused because he heard it, a sharp, uneven click beneath the smooth purr of an engine being forced to start and failing. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just wrong. Then the front doors opened, and the room adjusted itself. Evelyn Carter walked in with the stillness of someone used to being watched. Her cream coat was tailored, her hair pinned back without softness, her phone vibrating in one hand and a key fob in the other. Outside, a black Lamborghini sat at the curb under the winter sun. Inside, her silver Porsche refused to wake. Preston rushed toward her with a smile too bright to be trusted. "Ms. Carter, we've isolated the issue. Likely transmission control failure. Expensive, but manageable." Evelyn's expression barely changed. "I was told that last week." Caleb heard the engine try again. Click. Pause. Choke. His eyes moved toward the rear quarter panel, then to the diagnostic screen one technician had left open. The numbers flickered for half a second before Preston snapped the tablet shut. Caleb did not mean to speak. But the sound pulled the words out of him. "That doesn't sound like a transmission." The showroom went quiet in the way expensive rooms go quiet when the wrong person has entered the conversation. Preston turned slowly. A salesman near the coffee bar smirked. Evelyn looked at Caleb for the first time, not rudely, not kindly, but with the cool assessment of a woman deciding whether a problem had just become a person. "And you are?" she asked. Caleb lowered the rag from his hands. "Caleb Brooks, ma'am." Preston laughed under his breath. "He helps in the back." Basic maintenance. Cleaning. Nothing involving your vehicle. Caleb did not correct him. He did not raise his chin or harden his voice. He simply looked at the Porsche again, listening. Machines don't care what badge is on your shirt, he said. They only tell the truth. Something passed across Evelyn's face. Not trust. Not warmth. Maybe irritation sharpened by curiosity. Preston stepped closer, his smile thinning. Careful. A car like this is not a church van with a loose belt. Caleb folded the rag once, then twice, and placed it on the steel counter. No, sir. That's why I was listening before touching. A few employees exchanged looks. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Her eyes moved from Caleb's worn jacket to his steady hands, then to the small dented tin box barely visible in his pocket. You think you can fix it? She asked. Preston opened his mouth, but Evelyn lifted one finger and silenced him without looking. Caleb thought of Naomi's permission slip under the sunflower magnet. He thought of her pretending not to care. He thought of the way men like Preston turned skill into permission and permission into a locked door. I think I can tell you what it isn't, Caleb said. Evelyn walked to the glass desk, set her Lamborghini key fob on it, and let the small black object land with a sound sharper than it should have been. Then prove it, she said. Fix my Porsche before sunset, Mr. Brooks, or admit you were just talking. Caleb looked at the key, then at the Porsche, then at the showroom full of waiting faces. In his pocket, the old tin box pressed lightly against his ribs. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed once. A message from Naomi filled the cracked screen. Daddy, the science fair lady said today is the last day. I told her you fix impossible things. Caleb did not touch the Lamborghini key. That was the first thing Evelyn noticed. Not the Porsche. Not the crowd. Not Preston's tight smile. The key sat on the glass desk between them, black and polished, a little symbol of money daring a man to forget himself. Caleb looked at it once, then slipped his phone into his jacket pocket with Naomi's message still glowing behind the cracked screen. I'm not here to win your car, he said quietly. I'm here to see if yours can still run. The silence after that was not empty. It had weight. A young salesman near the coffee bar lowered his phone, but not before Caleb saw the red recording dot. Preston saw it too, and his mouth curved like he had just been handed a tool sharper than any wrench. That's enough, Preston said, stepping between Caleb and Evelyn as if protecting fine glass from dust. Mr. Brooks, you are not authorized to diagnose premium client vehicles in the customer showroom. Clock out. We'll discuss your future here Monday. Caleb's eyes moved to the Porsche, then to the service bay door, then to the security camera tucked beneath the white ceiling. He could feel every face in the room waiting for him to make himself smaller or louder. Both would have pleased them. Outside, sunlight flashed off the Lamborghini's hood. Inside, Naomi's words sat against his ribs. You fix impossible things. He breathed once through his nose. Monday won't change what I heard, he said. Preston's smile vanished. You're about to lose a job over a sound. Caleb reached into his pocket and touched the dented tin box. The metal was warm from his body. He did not open it. He just held it there for half a second, like a man reminding himself who taught him how to stand still. I've lost jobs for less, he said. I won't lose my manners. A few people looked away. Evelyn did not. She watched the line of his shoulders, the way anger came to him and found no place to sit. That unsettled her more than if he had snapped. Men in her world hid fear under polish and ego under charm. Caleb hid nothing, yet gave away almost nothing. Preston turned toward Evelyn. Ms. Carter, I apologize. We run a disciplined operation here. Some temporary workers mistake proximity for expertise. The word temporary landed hard, but Caleb did not flinch. He thought of Mrs. Darlene Price waiting near the school gate if he was late. He thought of the science fair table Naomi had practiced standing beside, her small hands moving over cardboard planets as if the universe might listen if she explained it clearly enough. "I can leave," Caleb said. "But don't let them replace a transmission until someone checks the sensor feed under load." Preston laughed too fast. "There is no sensor issue." Evelyn's eyes shifted. "Not much. Just enough." "You checked?" she asked. Preston blinked. "My lead technician did." "That wasn't my question." The showroom cooled by a degree. Preston straightened his cuffs. "The diagnostic process is not something we perform for an audience." Caleb took one step back, giving Evelyn the space Preston had tried to own. It was a small movement. Respectful. Almost invisible. But Evelyn saw it. She also saw the oil rag Caleb had folded neatly on the counter, not tossed aside, not left dirty against the white surface. A man under insult, still careful with someone else's room. It did not fit the picture Preston was painting. If you have ever had to stay calm while people got you wrong, hold on to this moment. Comment where you learned that kind of patience, and subscribe if you want to see what Caleb does when silence starts costing him more than pride. Preston lifted his tablet and tapped quickly. "Security, please escort Mr. Brooks to the employee exit." One of the guards by the glass doors hesitated, then stepped forward. He was not cruel. Just employed. Caleb nodded to him before the man even spoke. "No trouble," Caleb said. "I know the way." Evelyn's phone buzzed again in her palm. A board member. A charity auction. A room full of people waiting for the version of her that never hesitated. But her gaze drifted to the Porsche. The engine light still pulsed faintly on the dash, like a heartbeat behind tinted glass. Caleb walked past the car slowly, not touching it, only listening as a technician tried once more to start it. Click. Pause. Choke. Preston snapped, "Stop turning it over." Too late. Evelyn heard the sound now because Caleb had taught the room to hear it. At the employee doorway, Caleb's phone buzzed again. He glanced down despite himself. Naomi had sent a photo, her science fair form on the school desk, the deadline circled in red marker. Under it, one line, "I told them my dad doesn't quit." Evelyn saw the message only because the glass door reflected the screen for half a second. Her expression did not soften. Not yet. But something in her stillness changed. Then Preston spoke behind her, low but careless, thinking Caleb was already gone. "Don't worry, Miss Carter. Men like that always want to look useful when rich people are watching." Caleb stopped with his hand on the exit bar. The guard looked at him. The room waited. Caleb did not turn around. He only said, "My daughter watches me closer than rich people do." And as the words settled into the polished air, Evelyn looked up at the security camera above the service bay and noticed Preston had moved the tablet just before Caleb spoke the first time. Caleb made it to Naomi's school 12 minutes after the last teacher had locked the side doors. The sky had gone purple over the parking lot, and the flag out front snapped softly in the cold. Naomi sat on the lowest step with her purple backpack between her knees, her cardboard solar system resting beside her like a tired little universe. Mrs. Darlene Price stood near the curb in a wool hat, one hand tucked into her coat, the other holding Naomi's permission slip. She did not scold him. That was mercy. "Traffic?" she asked. Caleb looked at his daughter first. "Something like that." Naomi stood quickly, trying to look older than 10. "It's okay, Daddy. Mrs. Price said she could wait." Caleb crouched, brushed a bit of glitter from Naomi's sleeve, and checked her face the way he checked engines, quietly, looking for what was not being said. "You shouldn't have had to." Naomi shrugged. "I knew you'd come." The words landed gently and heavily at the same time. He took the science fair form from Mrs. Price, saw the red deadline circle, and folded it once without creasing the teacher's signature. "Thank you, Darlene," he said. "I'll make it right." Mrs. Price studied him. "You always try to." That was all. In the old truck, the heater coughed twice before giving them a thin stream of warmth. Naomi buckled herself into the cracked passenger seat, setting the cardboard planets on her lap like they were breakable glass. Caleb turned the key and listened to the engine. A knock near the belt. Not urgent. Not yet. Everything in his life seemed to run that way, holding together, asking for one more day. Naomi watched him from the corner of her eye. "Did you fix the impossible thing?" Caleb pulled onto the road. Streetlights rolled over his face in soft gold bars. "Not today." "Why?" He kept both hands on the wheel. "Because sometimes people ask you to prove yourself when what they really want is for you to forget who you are." Naomi thought about that. Outside, a bus groaned past them, windows bright with strangers going somewhere warmer. "Did you forget?" she asked. Caleb smiled, but it did not reach all the way. "No, baby." He tapped the steering wheel once. "That part still works." Their apartment smelled like laundry soap, reheated soup, and the faint metal breath of the radiator. Naomi spread her homework across the kitchen table while Caleb counted what was left in the coffee tin. Bills lay in a neat stack beside the salt shaker. Rent notice. Power bill. Science fair fee. A reminder from the dentist he had been pretending not to see. His hands moved slowly, aligning each paper edge. Order was not wealth, but it was something. Naomi sharpened a pencil with a tiny blue sharpener shaped like a whale. "I can sell my old skates," she said without looking up. Caleb stopped counting. "No, I don't use them." "Still no." "But the fare, Naomi." His voice was low, not hard. She looked up. "A child doesn't pay for a grown man's promise." The room went quiet except for the refrigerator humming unevenly. Naomi nodded, not because she fully understood, but because she heard the door in his voice and knew it was closed. Caleb warmed soup in a small pot and fixed the loose handle on her backpack while it simmered. Needle through fabric. Pull. Knot. He moved with the same patience he had shown under the showroom lights, only here there was no audience to misunderstand it. When Naomi finished her worksheet, he checked every answer. Not rushing. Not glancing at his phone, even when it buzzed once from an unknown number. Then again. He turned it face down. Later, after Naomi brushed her teeth and crawled beneath her blanket, Caleb sat at the kitchen table under the weak yellow bulb. He opened the dented tin box at last. The lid gave a soft click. Inside, the small brass-colored connector lay wrapped in cloth, darker at the edges from age and oil. He touched it with one finger, then drew his hand back. Beside it were 3 tiny washers, 2 screws, and a sensor thread gauge he had made himself from scrap metal. Not pretty. Accurate. His father's old handwriting was still taped inside the lid, half faded. "Listen before you turn." Caleb read the words once, then closed the box. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. A message from Vale Prestige Motors filled the cracked screen. "Due to today's unauthorized conduct, your remaining shifts are suspended pending review." He stared at it for a long moment. No anger crossed his face. Only calculation. School fee. Groceries. Gas. Naomi's winter shoes, already tight at the toes. From the bedroom, Naomi murmured in her sleep, a soft sound like a question. Caleb rose, stood in her doorway, and watched her small hand curled around the one-eared rabbit. "I'm still here," he whispered. The phone buzzed once more in his palm. A different number now. No company signature. Just one line, "This is Evelyn Carter. Bring the tin box tomorrow morning. I want to hear what you heard." Caleb arrived at Vale Prestige Motors at 8:07 the next morning, not through the glass front doors, but through the service entrance where delivery drivers signed their names beside coffee stains and tire dust. The city had not warmed yet. Cold air clung to his jacket. In one hand, he carried the dented tin box. In the other, a paper bag with Naomi's unfinished breakfast biscuit because she had insisted he take it. "You'll forget to eat," she had said, pushing it into his palm with the seriousness of a nurse. He had walked her to Mrs. Darlene Price's door before sunrise, tied her loose shoelace, and promised he would be at school before the final bell. Not try. B. That promise now sat heavier than the tin box. The guard at the service desk looked up from a clipboard. Same man as yesterday. Same tired eyes. "Mr. Brooks," he said carefully, as if Caleb's name had become something delicate overnight. "Ms. Carter asked for you in Bay 3. Caleb nodded. "Thank you." He did not ask whether his shifts were still suspended. He did not ask if Preston had changed his mind. Asking too early gave people the pleasure of refusing twice. Bay 3 was sealed behind a glass partition normally reserved for private clients who did not want fingerprints, noise, or ordinary life near their cars. Evelyn stood inside wearing a charcoal coat over a pale blouse, her hair pinned back, her expression composed enough to pass for certainty. Preston stood beside her with a tablet under one arm, 2 technicians behind him, and a young assistant near the wall pretending not to listen. The Porsche sat under white fluorescent light, beautiful and useless. Caleb stepped in and felt every pair of eyes adjust to him. The room smelled of waxed floors, engine coolant, and expensive distrust. Evelyn did not smile. "You came. You asked. You were told not to return. You asked after that." A small pause. One of the technicians glanced down to hide a reaction. Preston cleared his throat. "For the record, Miss Carter, this meeting is irregular. Mr. Brooks is currently under review for unauthorized interference with a client case." Caleb set the tin box on a steel workbench, gently, like it could bruise. "I haven't interfered with anything." Preston's eyes flicked to the box. "Then that won't be necessary." Evelyn looked at the old container. The faded peppermint logo. The dent near the lid. The cloth edge tucked beneath it. Something about it bothered her because it did not belong in the clean arrogance of the room. "Open it," she said. Caleb did. No drama. No flourish. Just his thumb under the lid, a soft metallic click, and the little world inside revealed itself: washers, screws, a brass-colored connector, a thread gauge cut from scrap metal, everything arranged with an order too precise to be junk. Preston gave a short laugh. "This is exactly what I was concerned about." Caleb looked at him. "Concern doesn't need an audience." The sentence landed quietly. Evelyn's eyes moved from Preston to Caleb. For the first time that morning, she did not speak immediately. She had planned this meeting as a test. Not of the car. Of the man. Bring him back. Watch whether he came angry. Watch whether he begged. Watch whether he blamed. Men often revealed themselves when handed a room full of witnesses. Caleb had revealed almost nothing except restraint. Evelyn folded her arms. "You said someone had been lying to the car." "I said it sounded that way." "Explain." Preston stepped forward. "Ms. Carter, I strongly advise against letting him make technical statements that could expose the dealership to." "I asked him," Evelyn said, still not looking away from Caleb. The assistant lowered her eyes. Caleb reached toward the Porsche but stopped before touching it. "May I?" Evelyn noticed. "Permission first." Even after humiliation. She nodded once. Caleb leaned in, not under the hood yet, just near the driver's side where the diagnostic cable hung. He studied the screen, then the engine bay, then the faint smudge on the edge of the sensor housing. His hand stayed still longer than expected. Listening again. Looking again. Preston shifted his weight. "Well, Caleb opened the tin box and lifted the scrap metal thread gauge. One technician snorted. Caleb ignored it. He held the gauge beside a tiny exposed fastener, not replacing anything, not proving anything too quickly. Just comparing. The room leaned toward him despite itself. "This housing's been opened recently," he said. Preston's jaw tightened. "Of course it has. We inspected it. Then the paperwork should say who opened it." Evelyn's eyes sharpened. Preston tapped his tablet. "It does." "Good," Caleb said. "Then we agree records matter." It was not an accusation. That made it worse. Evelyn watched him step back from the car, refusing to take more space than he had been given. Her gaze fell to the paper bag in his coat pocket, the biscuit wrapped in a school napkin with Naomi's small handwriting on it, "Dad." She looked away before anyone caught her noticing. Status had trained her to see logos first, invoices second, people last. Caleb was making that order difficult. Then a sound broke through the glass wall. A small cry from the showroom. Not loud, but sharp enough to turn every head. A little boy, maybe 6, stood beside a coffee station where hot chocolate had spilled over his sleeve. His mother froze in embarrassment while a salesman looked irritated at the mess. Caleb moved before anyone important decided whether the problem was worth noticing. He crossed the bay, grabbed a clean towel, crouched at a careful distance, and held it out. "Cold water first," he said gently. "Not rubbing. Just hold it there." The boy sniffed, took the towel, and stopped crying in stages. Caleb did not ask his name. Did not perform kindness. Did not look back to see who watched. Evelyn did watch. Through the glass, still as a shadow. Her test had been about whether Caleb deserved to touch her car. But now, watching him kneel on a showroom floor to protect a stranger's child from shame, she realized the test had exposed something else entirely. Not his weakness. Hers. Preston muttered behind her, "He's stalling." Evelyn did not answer. Her eyes had returned to the security camera above Bay 3, where the red recording light blinked over the Porsche, over the tin box, over the place Preston had stood the night before. And for the first time, she wondered who in that room had actually been afraid of the truth. The boy's mother kept apologizing to the air, to the salesman, to the shining floor, to anyone who looked expensive enough to be offended. Hot chocolate had splashed across the white tile and over the boy's sleeve, leaving a brown trail from the coffee station to the edge of Bay 3. The salesman stood frozen with a stack of brochures in his hand, irritated but careful not to show it too openly. Children were bad for the atmosphere of rooms designed to sell control. Caleb stayed crouched, one knee on the floor, the clean towel between his hand and the boy's wrist. "You're all right," he said, voice low. "Scared hurts louder than hot chocolate." The boy blinked through tears, unsure whether to believe him. Caleb turned the towel to a cooler side and nodded toward the mother. "There's a restroom behind the lounge. Cold water for 2 minutes. No ice." The mother's eyes filled with embarrassed gratitude. "I'm so sorry. I can pay for the cleaning." Preston appeared behind the glass like a shadow with a tie. "That won't be necessary," he said, though his tone made it clear it would be remembered. Caleb reached for the gray oil rag tucked in his back pocket, then stopped. Too dirty for a child. Instead, he pulled the paper napkin from the bag Naomi had packed with his biscuit. Her blocky handwriting was still on it, "Dad." He folded the napkin around the boy's fingers so the wet towel wouldn't slip. Evelyn watched from inside Bay 3 without moving. The napkin was cheap. The gesture was not. Caleb had not looked toward her once. He had not checked whether kindness had an audience. That unsettled her more than the sound of the Porsche, more than the old tin box, more than Preston's careful panic around the records. The boy's mother guided him toward the restroom, whispering thank you, under her breath. Caleb stood and picked up the empty cup before it could roll under a display car. Then he took the mop from a startled porter and cleaned the spill himself. "Brooks," Preston snapped, stepping into the showroom, "that is not your assignment." Caleb kept the mop moving in slow, even strokes. "It's on the floor. We have staff for that. Then they can finish it when the child's not standing in it." A few customers turned. One man near the Lamborghini gave a soft laugh, the kind that was not quite humor and not quite contempt. Caleb heard it. He did not feed it. He rinsed the mop, squeezed it dry, and set it aside exactly where it belonged. The whole thing cost him 4 minutes. Maybe 5. But Caleb's eyes went to the wall clock the moment he returned to Bay 3. Evelyn saw that too. He had promised Naomi the final bell. Men in her world broke promises with assistants and calendars and better offers. Caleb looked at a clock like a man measuring the distance between duty and consequence. Preston saw the glance and used it. "Somewhere else to be?" he asked. "Because Miss Carter's vehicle is not a side errand." Caleb picked up the tin box and closed the lid with his thumb. "Neither is my daughter." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. 3 missed calls from her assistant. 1 message from the charity board, "Car issue resolved yet? Donors arriving early." She turned the screen dark. For the first time all morning, she chose not to answer a demand. Preston's jaw tightened as if her silence had insulted him personally. "Ms. Carter," he said, "this is exactly why we avoid emotional complications in technical spaces." Evelyn looked at Caleb. He had stepped back beside the Porsche, leaving no wet footprint, no mess, no performance behind him. Just a cleaner floor and a calmer child somewhere down the hall. "Emotional complications," she repeated. Preston adjusted his tablet. "Distractions. Sympathy. People mistake small gestures for competence." Caleb said nothing. That silence had become its own kind of pressure. Evelyn walked to the Porsche and stood near the open bay door, close enough now to smell cold air on Caleb's jacket and faint coffee from the biscuit bag in his pocket. She did not soften. Not openly. But her voice changed by one careful degree. "You still have time to look at the car," she said. "Not repair it. Look." Preston's eyes flashed. "That would violate procedure." "Then write a procedure for listening," she said. The assistant near the wall stopped typing. Caleb glanced at Evelyn, then at the clock again. He was calculating, always calculating. Work. Child. Fee. Reputation. A man with too little money did not have the luxury of wasting minutes, even noble ones. He opened the tin box and took out the scrap metal thread gauge. The small brass connector rolled slightly inside, catching the fluorescent light. Evelyn's eyes followed it. For a second, the bright showroom blurred into something else in her mind, a hospital hallway years ago, a vending machine dinner, her father's watch ticking beside a stack of unread contracts, a tiny screw from that watch turning between her fingers after he died. She looked away before the memory could name itself. Caleb leaned toward the sensor housing but paused, listening again. Not touching. The Porsche gave a faint electrical tick as the technician cycled the power. Once. Twice. Then a tiny delay. Caleb's brow moved almost imperceptibly. Evelyn saw it. Preston did too. "There," Caleb said quietly. "That's not where. That's mismatch." Preston laughed, but it came too late. Convenient. Caleb set the gauge down, calm as stone. Truth usually is, once people stop interrupting it. The boy and his mother returned from the restroom then. The sleeve was damp, the tears gone. The little boy broke away just long enough to walk up to Caleb and hand him the folded napkin, now wrinkled and wet at the edges. "Your kid wrote on it," the boy said. "You should keep it." Caleb took it carefully, as if it were something fragile. "Thank you, sir." Evelyn watched him smooth the napkin once before placing it in his jacket pocket beside the old tin. No speech. No show. Just a father preserving proof that he was loved by someone who expected him home. Preston leaned close to Evelyn, voice low enough for only her to hear. You are letting a suspended temp manipulate the room. Evelyn's eyes stayed on Caleb. No, she said, almost to herself. I think the room is reacting to him. At that moment, the assistant's tablet chimed. She looked down, frowned, and turned the screen toward Evelyn. A freeze frame from the previous night's security feed had loaded automatically from Bay 3. It showed Preston standing beside the Porsche after closing, his hand inside the open sensor housing, long before Caleb had ever been called back. Evelyn watched the freeze frame until the screen dimmed from neglect. Preston's hand was there, paused in the blue-white glow of the tablet, half hidden inside the Porsche's open sensor housing. Not proof. Not yet. But enough to disturb the clean lines of the story she had been handed. Around her, Bay 3 kept breathing in small mechanical sounds, a lift settling, a technician rolling a cart too carefully, Preston speaking in a controlled voice that had begun to sound rehearsed. That image is out of context, he said. Routine inspection after hours. Nothing unusual. Evelyn did not answer. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. Then again. The charity board. Her assistant. A donor whose name could buy silence in most rooms. She turned the phone face down on the workbench beside Caleb's tin box, and for one brief second, the two objects sat near each other, polished glass and dented metal, one built for urgency, the other for memory. Caleb noticed the placement but said nothing. He had already stepped back from the Porsche, keeping his hands visible, waiting for permission that still had not fully arrived. Evelyn hated that she noticed that too. Later, in the private office above the showroom, she stood alone behind glass walls while the city moved beneath her in hard silver lines. The office was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful after closing. Too clean. Too quiet. Her heels made no sound on the thick carpet. On her desk lay three things: the paused security image, Caleb's suspended shift notice, and a donor contract requiring her signature before noon. Her phone kept lighting up beside a cup of coffee gone cold. She did not drink it. She looked instead at the enlarged still from the footage. Preston's wrist. The open housing. The timestamp. 9:42 p.m. The night before Caleb had been called back. Her assistant, Marin, stood near the doorway with a folder pressed to her chest. The board wants this resolved before the auction, she said gently. Mr. Vale is recommending we classify Brooks as an unauthorized risk and move forward with the transmission replacement. Evelyn's gaze stayed on the image. Of course he is. Marin hesitated. There's concern that you're giving too much room to someone outside the approved chain. Evelyn looked up then, cool again by reflex. I don't give room. I control rooms. The sentence sounded like her father. That was the problem. For a moment, the glass office thinned, and she was 17 again in a hospital corridor, holding a paper cup of vending machine coffee while men in suits told her grief had to wait until signatures were handled. Her father's watch had stopped that night. One tiny screw loose under the cracked backplate. Everyone told her to replace it. Caleb's tin box had brought the memory back with humiliating precision. Small things, dismissed by people in expensive shoes. Small things that could stop time. She turned away from Marin before her face revealed too much. Downstairs, Caleb was not thinking about Evelyn Carter's father, her office, or the way she had gone silent over a piece of footage. He was thinking about the school bell. He stood near the service exit, jacket zipped, tin box in one hand, phone in the other. A new message from Mrs. Price waited on the screen. Naomi's teacher says the science fair table closes at 4:30. I can keep her with me, but she's trying not to look worried. Caleb closed his eyes for half a breath. Behind him, a junior technician whispered that he was lucky Miss Carter had not sued him. Another said suspended workers usually did not get second chances. Caleb did not turn around. He opened the biscuit bag Naomi had packed, broke the biscuit in half, and placed one half on a paper towel for the young porter who had skipped breakfast to clean the showroom spill. "Eat before the coffee eats you," Caleb said. The porter blinked. "Man, you need this more than me." Caleb tucked the other half away. "I've had practice being hungry. No complaint. Just fact." Upstairs, Marin slid another document onto Evelyn's desk. "This is his temporary employment file. Minimal references. No certifications listed beyond basic service work." Evelyn opened it, expecting emptiness. She found a photocopy of Caleb's ID, a background check, an emergency contact labeled Naomi Brooks, and a note from payroll about garnished hours after a school-related absence. At the bottom, partly obscured by a staple, was a scanned image from the intake interview, Caleb's tin box sitting beside his hand. The lid was open. Taped inside it, in faded handwriting, were 5 words Evelyn had not seen on the shop camera. "Listen before you turn." Her throat tightened before she could stop it. Marin leaned closer. "Should I have security keep him available?" Evelyn almost said yes. It would have been simple. Controlled. Useful. Instead, she closed the file slowly. "No," Marin waited. Evelyn's voice lowered by a degree. "Ask him what time his daughter gets out of school." Marin's eyebrows moved, just slightly. "His daughter?" Evelyn looked back at the frozen frame of Preston beside the Porsche. Then at the old handwriting in the file. Then at the donor contract she still had not signed. "Yes," she said. "And Marin, pull the full footage from 9:30 to 10 o'clock. Not the dealership summary. The raw file." Downstairs, Caleb's phone buzzed again. He expected Mrs. Price. Instead, it was a message from an unknown number. "Miss Carter wants to know what time Naomi gets out of school." Caleb read the message twice before he moved. Not because the words were complicated, but because they had crossed a line he kept guarded even when he had little else to guard. Naomi was not a footnote to his employment file. She was not leverage. She was not a soft place for strangers to press. He typed back only 3 words, "Why do you ask?" Then he slid the phone into his pocket and lifted the tin box from the workbench. Across the bay, the Porsche sat under the lights with its hood still raised, a machine surrounded by men who kept pretending the truth required permission. The reply came before he reached the service exit. "Ms. Carter wants to make sure you do not miss pickup." Caleb stopped. For a second, the noise of the shop thinned out, the hiss of air tools, the roll of tires over concrete, the faint electrical tick inside the Porsche. He looked toward the glass office above the showroom. Evelyn was visible only as a pale shape behind reflections, standing still with a phone in her hand. Caleb did not wave. He did not nod. He only turned back to the car, placed the tin box on the bench again, and said to the guard near the door, "I'll stay until 3:30. Not 1 minute passed. The guard, who had children of his own and the tired posture to prove it, gave a small nod. "Fair." Evelyn heard about the answer through Marin, and the firmness of it touched something she did not want touched. Not gratitude. Not warmth. Boundaries. Clean ones. Men around her usually negotiated upward when offered access. Caleb had negotiated back toward a school bell. By 3:12, rain had begun tapping against the showroom windows, turning the Lamborghini outside into a dark reflection on wet pavement. Evelyn came down from the office without her coat. The charity board had called 4 times. Preston had sent 2 messages marked urgent. She ignored both and entered Bay 3 with a folder tucked beneath her arm. "You gave yourself 18 minutes," she said. Caleb was kneeling beside the Porsche, comparing the scrap metal gauge to the sensor housing. 17 now. That's not much time. It's enough to not pretend I have more. She stood a few feet away, close enough to see the frayed cuff of his jacket, far enough to keep the rules of her world intact. The tin box sat open between them. Inside the lid, the faded handwriting faced upward. Listen before you turn. Evelyn's eyes kept returning to it despite herself. Who wrote that? She asked. Caleb did not look up. Someone who knew engines don't forgive pride. It was not an answer. It was a door left closed. She respected that, though respect still felt unfamiliar in her mouth. Before she could ask anything else, Caleb's phone buzzed. This time he answered. Hey, baby. His voice changed, not softer exactly, but lower, steadier, as if all the sharp edges in the room had been placed out of reach. Evelyn looked away, but she listened. No, I didn't forget. Mrs. Price is picking you up if the rain gets worse. I'm leaving soon. A pause. Then Naomi's small voice came through the speaker, bright and worried. Did the fancy car lady let you hear it again? Caleb closed his eyes for half a second. She did. Did you tell her cars are like people? Caleb's hand stilled on the gauge. Evelyn turned back. Not today. You should, Naomi said. You always say they make noise before they break. The room went quiet in an odd, human way. Even one technician looked up. Caleb gave a small breath that might have been a laugh if life had been lighter. Finish your homework, Professor. Love you. Love you more. He ended the call and set the phone face down. No apology. No explanation. He did not use the moment to make himself look tender. He simply returned to the work in front of him, as though fatherhood was not a performance, but gravity. Evelyn looked at the tin box again. Her father's watch came back to her in a flash, the stopped hands, the tiny screw, the adult voices saying replacement was easier than repair. She had spent half her life replacing things before they could disappoint her. Staff. Partners. Friendships. Trust. Caleb, somehow, kept listening first. Cars are like people, she asked, the words quieter than she intended. Caleb aligned the gauge, checked the angle, and finally looked at her. Only in one way. Which is? Ignore the small warning long enough, and the bill gets bigger. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her hand. Preston's name lit the screen. She declined the call. That was the first time Caleb saw her choose silence over control. It lasted 3 seconds. Then Marin hurried in from the showroom, rain beating on her sleeves. Her face was tight. Ms. Carter, there's a problem. Mr. Vale says someone leaked footage of Mr. Brooks near the car yesterday. It's circulating among the VIP clients. No context. Just him speaking to you and being escorted out. Caleb's jaw did not clench. His shoulders did not rise. But his eyes went to the clock. 3:21. Naomi. The fee. The promise. Evelyn felt the shift before she understood it. The small bridge that had formed between a child's voice, a dented tin box, and an unfinished truth was already being pulled into the machinery of reputation. Marin lowered her voice. The board wants him removed from the building before donors arrive. Caleb closed the tin box with a soft click, as gentle as a period at the end of a sentence. Evelyn looked at his hands, then at the rain-streaked glass, then at the phone still glowing with Preston's missed call. And from the showroom beyond the partition, a customer's voice rose loud enough for everyone to hear. Is that the man from the video? The customer's voice did not boom, but it carried. In a showroom made of glass, even a whisper could become public property. Heads turned from the coffee bar, from the reception desk, from beside the Lamborghini where 2 donors had been admiring paint they would never touch without permission. Caleb stood inside Bay 3 with the tin box closed in his hand, the clock behind him showing 3:22. His name was not on the video, but his face was. His jacket. His folded rag. The moment he had been escorted toward the employee exit now played on 3 phones at once, cropped tight so no one could hear Preston's words before it, or Caleb's quiet answer after. Just a black man in a work coat speaking to Evelyn Carter beside a broken Porsche, then security moving in. Context had been removed with surgical care. Preston walked in from the showroom with his tablet tucked against his side, not smiling, not gloating, just wearing the polished concern of a man protecting a company from a problem he had helped create. "Ms. Carter," he said, low enough to sound professional and loud enough to be overheard, "this is why we follow procedure. Perception matters." Caleb looked toward the glass beyond him. A woman near the coffee station pulled her child closer, not because Caleb had moved, but because a screen had taught her to be afraid of a story she had not finished watching. The little boy from earlier, the one with the hot chocolate sleeve, stared at Caleb with confusion in his face. Children remembered kindness longer than adults remembered facts. Evelyn saw the boy start to lift his hand, as if to say something, but his mother gently stopped him. That small stopped hand hit harder than the video. Marin stepped beside Evelyn, voice tight. "The board is asking for a written statement. They want distance before donors arrive." "Distance from what?" Evelyn asked. "From risk." Evelyn looked at Caleb. He had not defended himself. He had not asked who leaked the clip. He had not even looked at Preston with accusation. He simply stood there with the tin box in one hand and his phone in the other, measuring time he could not get back. That stillness bothered her because guilt usually reached for noise. Caleb reached for neither. Preston set his tablet on the bench and swiped to an incident form already prepared. "We can classify it as unauthorized technical interference and remove his access pending investigation. Clean. Standard. No escalation." The word clean made Caleb glance at the floor he had mopped for a child no one else had wanted to embarrass themselves helping. He took one breath. "If you need me gone, say that," he said. "Don't make it sound cleaner than it is." Evelyn's eyes flicked to him. The sentence was not angry. That made it impossible to dismiss. Preston's face tightened. "You are not being removed because of who you are, Mr. Brooks. You are being removed because of what you did." Caleb nodded once, as if accepting the shape of the lie without accepting its truth. "Then show all of it." Silence dropped. A technician by the lift stopped pretending to polish a wrench. Marin looked at Evelyn. Preston's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the tablet. "All of what?" he asked. Caleb did not answer him. He looked at the camera above Bay 3, then at Evelyn. "If a room watched me wrong, maybe the room can watch again." It was the longest plea he allowed himself, and even that was not begging. It was a boundary offered in plain clothes. Evelyn turned to Marin. "Pull the full clip." Preston stepped in quickly. "That will take time we don't have. Donors are arriving in less than an hour." "Raw footage," Evelyn said. "From every angle." Marin hesitated. "The system's summary only has the front floor camera attached." "Then access the archive." Preston exhaled sharply. "Ms. Carter, with respect, you are letting sentiment complicate a very simple liability issue." Evelyn looked at the incident form on the tablet. A blank line waited for her signature. Her signature had ended contracts, bought companies, replaced people, protected walls. One stroke, and Caleb Brooks would disappear from the building as neatly as a spill wiped from white tile. Her pen hovered. The room watched. Caleb's phone buzzed. He looked down despite himself. "Mrs. Price, Naomi is asking if you're still coming. They're packing up the science fair tables." His thumb tightened around the phone. Not enough for anyone to notice except Evelyn, who suddenly understood that the real clock in the room was not on the wall. It was in a little girl waiting with cardboard planets. Preston saw the opening. "Mr. Brooks can collect personal items after review." The tin box stays here until we confirm nothing from it was used on Ms. Carter's vehicle. Caleb looked at the dented box in his hand. Something old moved behind his eyes and disappeared before it could be named. "That's mine," he said. "It may be evidence," Preston replied. The word evidence turned the small object ugly in the room. A few people looked at the box differently now, as if love and memory could become contraband when placed under fluorescent light. Caleb looked at Evelyn once. Not asking. Just seeing what she would do with power while holding a pen. She did not sign. Not yet. But she did not stop Preston either. That was the cut of it. Caleb set the tin box on the steel bench with care that made the room feel smaller. "My daughter is waiting," he said. "I won't make her pay for grown folks being unsure." He walked toward the service exit, each step calm, each second costing him. Behind him, Marin's tablet chimed. A second camera angle had loaded from the archive, half obscured by a service cart, time-stamped after closing. Evelyn looked down. The image showed Preston reaching toward Caleb's tin box the night before it was ever supposed to be in Bay 3. Caleb reached the service exit before Evelyn found her voice. The rain had softened to a gray mist outside, blurring the line between the parking lot and the street beyond it. His old truck waited near the far curb, dull green paint beaded with water, one headlight fogged at the edge. Through the passenger window, Naomi's empty booster cushion was still tucked behind the seat, beside a folded school drawing of the solar system that had slipped halfway from her backpack that morning. Saturn was bent. The moon had a smile. Caleb saw it through the glass and stopped for half a second, just long enough for the weight of the day to catch up. Then his phone rang. "Mrs. Price." He answered before the second buzz. "I'm on my way." He listened. His face did not change, but his hand tightened around the old truck key. "No, ma'am. Don't let her think I forgot." A pause. His voice lowered. "Tell her I chose wrong on time, not on love." Behind him, inside the showroom, Evelyn stood frozen over Marin's tablet. The second camera angle was grainy, half-blocked, imperfect. But it showed enough to disturb every polished explanation Preston had offered. His hand near the tin box. The sensor housing open. A timestamp no one had mentioned. Preston leaned close, his voice controlled. "That footage is misleading. I moved a service cart. Nothing more." Evelyn did not look at him. Caleb had already given up defending himself. That bothered her more than any accusation could have. He was not leaving because he had lost. He was leaving because a child was waiting, and no room full of money had the right to make her wait longer. Caleb stepped into the mist. The cold hit his face cleanly. He opened the truck door and found Naomi's lunchbox on the seat, untouched except for one corner of the napkin sticking out. He had packed it too early. She had been too nervous to eat. The sight did what Preston's insults had not. It made him close his eyes. Just once. Then the showroom door opened behind him. Evelyn walked out without an umbrella, her coat collar catching rain. Her heels clicked once on wet concrete before she stopped several feet away, as if crossing the rest of the distance required permission she had not earned. "Mr. Brooks." Caleb turned. His posture stayed respectful. Not welcoming. Not hostile. "Ma'am." She held up her phone. "I can send a car for your daughter. Have someone bring her here. We can cover the fare fee, your suspended shifts, anything delayed because of this." The offer came out efficient, clean, expensive. The kind of solution her world understood. Caleb looked at her for a quiet moment. Rain gathered on the brim of his cap. "My daughter is not a problem for your staff to relocate." Evelyn's mouth closed. He had not raised his voice. Somehow that made the boundary sharper. "I didn't mean it that way." "I know." He glanced back at the showroom, where silhouettes gathered behind glass, watching the shape of power learn how not to step on a man's pride. That doesn't mean it didn't land that way. Evelyn absorbed the sentence like cold water. Her phone vibrated again. Preston. The board. Donors. All the machinery demanding she return to the version of herself that solved discomfort by outsourcing it. Caleb opened the truck door wider, then paused. Through the glass wall, he saw the little boy from the hot chocolate spill standing near his mother, holding the damp napkin he had returned earlier. The boy was pointing toward Bay 3, toward the Porsche, toward a small orange warning light blinking on the diagnostic monitor. The technician beside him looked annoyed and reached to turn the screen away. Caleb saw the number flash. Not long. A half second. Long enough. His jaw set, not with anger, but with the kind of discipline that costs something. He looked at the time. 3:34. Then at the road. Then at the child in the showroom, still pointing. Evelyn followed his eyes. What is it? Caleb did not answer immediately. Naomi was waiting. The science fair table was closing. His shifts were suspended. His tin box had been taken as evidence. Every choice left a bruise somewhere. He took one step back toward the showroom. Then another. Evelyn's brows drew together. You need to go. I do. Then why are you coming back? Caleb looked at the Porsche through the rain-streaked glass. Because if they started again with that mismatch under load, it could fry the control unit. Then your $6 problem becomes a $5,000 lesson. The words were simple. Not dramatic. But Preston, watching from inside, went still. Caleb saw that too. He walked back into the showroom, not fast, not heroic, just a father spending minutes he did not have because leaving the truth half-spoken would make the lie more expensive for someone else. At the entrance, the guard lowered his voice. They said you're not cleared to touch anything. Caleb nodded. Then I won't touch it. He stopped at the threshold of Bay 3 and pointed from a distance. Kill the ignition. Now. The technician hesitated. Preston snapped, do not take instructions from him. The orange warning light blinked again. Caleb did not move closer. He only looked at Evelyn. Not pleading. Not performing. Just handing her the weight of a choice. Evelyn turned to the technician, her voice low. Turn it off. The engine died before it could fully wake. The room exhaled. Caleb checked the clock. 3:37. 3 more minutes gone. He turned to leave again, but Evelyn's eyes dropped to the passenger seat of his truck through the open door outside. The bent school drawing. The untouched lunchbox. The small proof of a child trying not to need too much. For the first time, she understood that his kindness had not been free. It had been taken from somewhere. From someone. Caleb stepped back into the mist, phone already in his hand to call Naomi, when Marin rushed to the doorway holding the tablet. Her voice shook just enough to break the room's polished calm. Ms. Carter, the raw file has audio. Evelyn looked up. Caleb stopped. From the tablet speaker came Preston's voice, recorded the night before, quiet and clear, swap the small part. She'll pay for the transmission. Marin's tablet made the whole room smaller. Preston's recorded voice hung in the air with a calmness more damaging than rage. Swap the small part. She'll pay for the transmission. No one moved at first. Not the donors by the Lamborghini. Not the technicians near the lift. Not the salesman whose phone was still half raised. Even the rain against the glass seemed to soften, as if the weather itself understood that truth had entered late and found everyone standing in the wrong place. Caleb stood just inside the service doorway, one hand on his old truck key, the other still holding his phone. Naomi's name glowed on the screen from the missed call he had not taken. That light hurt more than Preston's voice. Evelyn looked from the tablet to Preston, then to the Porsche. Her face did not break. It sharpened. But beneath the control, something colder moved through her. Fear. Not of being cheated. She had been cheated before. Money could absorb that. Reputation could absorb that. What unsettled her was the thought that she had almost signed her name to a lie that would have crushed a man who had been telling the truth without asking to be rewarded for it. Preston recovered first because men like him were practiced at surviving partial exposure. "That clip is missing context," he said. "We were testing a failure sequence. It sounds worse than it is." Evelyn's eyes lowered to the incident form still waiting on the bench. Caleb's tin box sat beside it, dented and quiet, labeled now in Preston's handwriting as retained item. Evidence. A word had tried to turn memory into suspicion. "Play the 30 seconds before it," Evelyn said. Marin tapped the screen. The footage jumped, stuttered, then froze. A black gap. File unavailable. Preston exhaled through his nose. Too quickly. Caleb noticed. Evelyn noticed Caleb noticing. It was an odd thing, that shared silence, like both had heard the same note under different music. "The archive is damaged," Marin said, frowning. "Only that segment?" Evelyn asked. "It appears so." Preston spread his hands. "Security systems overwrite. It happens." Caleb looked at the Porsche, then at the tin box. Not at Preston. Not with anger. More like disappointment had arrived and found no chair. "Machines usually fail around the part people touch," he said. Evelyn turned toward him. "You knew." "I suspected." "Why didn't you say that clearly?" Caleb's gaze moved to the glass wall, to the donors watching, to the phones, to the white floor where the video had already made a stranger out of him. "Because suspicion in my mouth sounds different to rooms like this." The sentence went through Evelyn without raising its voice. She had built rooms like this. Approved rooms like this. Hidden behind them when convenient. Her phone vibrated again, and this time the name on the screen was her board chair. She declined the call. Preston's expression flickered. Caleb saw that too. Evelyn stepped closer to the workbench and opened the tin box herself, slowly, as if touching it too quickly would be another trespass. Inside lay the washers, the scrap metal thread gauge, the brass connector wrapped in cloth, and the faded tape inside the lid. "Listen before you turn." Under the harsh light, the words looked less like a mechanic's note and more like a warning she had spent years ignoring. Evelyn's breath caught so faintly only she felt it. The handwriting had the same blunt patience as the inscription on her father's old watch card. Not the same hand. Not exactly. But close enough to open a door in her mind she had locked from the outside. "Who taught you that phrase?" she asked. Caleb's fingers tightened around his keys. A small movement. Gone fast. A man who fixed what he could and buried what he couldn't. "Your father." Caleb closed the tin box gently, leaving her hand resting on the lid for a second before she pulled it away. "Ms. Carter, I don't trade family for credibility." It was not cruel. It was clean. Evelyn looked down, chastened without being corrected. Marin shifted beside them. "There's more in his intake file," she said carefully. "A previous employer listed but not verified. Carter Industrial Service, 14 years ago." Evelyn's eyes lifted. The name struck the air differently. Carter Industrial had been her father's first company before the mergers, before the polished brand, before she learned that success meant never needing anyone twice. Caleb looked toward the exit. Too fast this time. Not guilty. Guarded. "That file is old," he said. "Old things still tell the truth," Evelyn replied, then regretted how much she sounded like him. Preston stepped in. "This is irrelevant. We have a current client issue, a leaked video, and an unauthorized worker with unverified tools inside a private bay." Caleb glanced at the clock. 346. Every minute now was a broken promise Naomi would try to forgive before he even apologized. Then finish your client issue, he said. Use the right part. Check the feed under load. Don't start it again until you do. Evelyn heard the restraint in that. He was giving them the answer without giving them himself. Helping while holding the door closed. She hated that she wanted to know what was behind it. And if I ask you to stay, she said. Caleb met her eyes. For the first time, the room around them seemed to fall back. Then I'll still leave, he said. My daughter has waded through enough of this company's uncertainty. No one had spoken to Evelyn that way all week. Maybe all year. Not disrespectfully. Worse. Honestly. Her phone vibrated again. Marin's tablet chimed at the same time, pulling up a locked personnel archive from Carter Industrial. A scanned work order appeared, stained at the corner, dated 14 years earlier. At the bottom was a supervisor's note: Brooks identified misthreaded sensor before catastrophic failure. Recommend full technician track. The signature beneath it was not Caleb's. It was Evelyn's father's. Evelyn stared at the screen, the color leaving her face by one quiet degree. She turned to ask Caleb the question forming in her throat, but the service doorway was already swinging shut behind him, and through the glass she saw him running, not toward the Porsche, not toward the truth finally catching up, but toward his old truck and the child he had chosen over being understood. Caleb reached the school as the last folding table was being carried into the storage closet. The hallway smelled of wet coats, floor wax, and construction paper. Naomi stood beside Mrs. Price with her cardboard solar system held against her chest, one corner crushed where Saturn had bent again. She did not run to him. That was how he knew he had hurt her. Children ran when disappointment had not yet taught them restraint. Caleb stopped 3 steps away, rain dark on his jacket, breath still uneven from the drive. I'm sorry, baby, he said. Naomi looked down at her planets. They said registration closed. Mrs. Price touched the girl's shoulder, then stepped back, giving father and daughter the dignity of a private moment in a public hall. Caleb crouched. His knees cracked softly. Then I'll ask tomorrow. The teacher said there isn't tomorrow. The sentence landed without drama. That made it worse. Caleb nodded, absorbing it the way he absorbed bad news from landlords and payroll offices, silently, without letting it splash onto the child in front of him. Then we'll build another sky, he said. Naomi's lower lip trembled, but she pressed it flat. Did the car lady need you more than me? Caleb's eyes closed for half a second. There it was. The cost, named by the only person whose voice could make him feel it. He did not defend himself. He did not explain Preston, the footage, the small orange warning light, the old file with a dead man's signature. None of that belonged on Naomi's shoulders. No, he said. Nobody needs me more than you. She studied him, trying to decide if truth could arrive late and still count. Then she stepped into his arms. He held her carefully, one hand spread across her back, the other keeping the fragile solar system from being crushed between them. Across town, Evelyn stood in her glass office with the old Carter Industrial work order glowing on Marin's tablet. The signature at the bottom looked like a ghost with ink. Her father's name. Caleb's name in the same document. A mistake prevented. A recommendation never followed. A door opened once, then apparently closed. She should have called him. She should have stopped him before he left. Instead, the board chair had arrived in person, gray suit damp from the rain, voice low with the practiced urgency of men who believed reputation was a living thing that must be fed before truth. Evelyn, you have donors downstairs, a leaked video circulating, and a dealership partner threatening litigation. You need to contain this. Preston stood near the conference table, pale but composed, his story already rebuilt around the missing footage. The audio is incomplete, he said. The work order is 14 years old. And Mr. Brooks left with knowledge of a private client issue. That is a breach. Evelyn looked at him. She could feel the wrongness now. Not as a theory. As a pressure behind her ribs. But the room was full of people waiting for her to be the version of herself that did not hesitate. Her father's old lesson, sharpened into a weapon, never let uncertainty show. Marin placed a document in front of her. Temporary removal notice, she said softly. Her eyes warned more than her voice could. It suspends his access until investigation. Evelyn stared at the line waiting for her signature. A delay, she told herself. Not a judgment. A procedure. A pause. But some pauses still close doors. Downstairs, Caleb's tin box remained on the steel bench in Bay 3. Evidence tag taped beside it. The word looked obscene. Evelyn signed. The pen moved once. Cleanly. Efficiently. The moment it was done, the office seemed colder. At the school, Caleb's phone buzzed while Naomi was buckling herself into the truck. He read the message through the cracked screen. Your access to Vale Prestige Motors has been suspended pending internal review. Personal property retained until clearance. Naomi saw his face before he put the phone away. Bad news? Caleb started the engine. It coughed, caught, and settled into a tired idle. Just grown-up weather. She looked at the empty spot on the seat where the tin box usually sat when he drove to work. Where's Grandpa's box? Caleb's hand stilled on the gearshift. He had never called it that around Evelyn. He had barely called it anything. Naomi had. Because children gave names to what adults tried to survive without naming. It's safe, he said. The lie was gentle. That did not make it harmless. Back at the showroom, Evelyn walked alone into Bay 3 after the board returned downstairs. The Porsche sat silent. The Lamborghini gleamed outside under rain. The incident form was filed. The suspension was active. The man who had warned them was gone. She stopped beside the bench and looked at Caleb's tin box under the evidence tag. Through the clear tape inside the lid, the faded handwriting faced the fluorescent lights. Listen before you turn. Marin entered behind her, holding another recovered clip from the archive. Her face had changed. Evelyn, she said, using her first name without permission. You need to see the rest. The video resumed where the black gap had ended. Preston's hand moved away from the sensor housing, but the camera caught something he had not noticed. The brass-colored connector in his palm was not from the Porsche. It was from Caleb's tin box. And beneath the audio hiss, Preston's voice returned, quieter this time, speaking to someone off camera. Brooks will know what it is. That's why we keep him away from it. Evelyn stood completely still. The signature. The box. The missing segment. The man she had just suspended. Then Marin lowered the tablet, her voice barely above a whisper. There's one more file. Your father requested Caleb Brooks by name. Evelyn did not bring the file to the boardroom quietly. She brought everything. The raw footage. The damaged segment. The recovered audio. The old Carter industrial work order with her father's signature. Caleb's tin box, still wearing the evidence tag like an insult. Downstairs, the donors had gathered near the showroom windows, murmuring beneath the soft shine of the Lamborghini. Preston stood beside the Porsche in a navy suit that had suddenly lost its power. The board chair watched from the glass office above, jaw tight, already calculating how truth would affect optics. Evelyn walked into Bay 3 with Marin at her side and placed the tin box on the steel bench in front of everyone. The small metallic sound cut through the room harder than a shout. Play it, she said. Marin connected the tablet to the wall monitor. Blue camera light filled the bay. The footage rolled from the beginning this time. No cropped angle. No neat summary. No edited mercy. Preston appeared after closing, opening the Porsche's sensor housing. His hand reached toward Caleb's box. The brass connector disappeared into his palm. Then his voice came through the speakers, calm and ordinary, as if cheating had become office work. Swap the small part. She'll pay for the transmission. A ripple moved through the crowd. Preston lifted one hand. That is being misrepresented. Evelyn turned toward him. Her voice was controlled, but not cold anymore. Coldness was too easy. This cost more. Then we will let the rest represent you. Marin played the next clip. Preston again, lower this time, Brooks will know what it is. That's why we keep him away from it. The room went silent in the way rooms go silent when no one wants to be seen choosing the wrong side. Evelyn opened the old file and placed it beside the tin box. 14 years ago, she said, Caleb Brooks identified the same kind of misthreaded sensor failure at Carter Industrial before it destroyed a fleet control system. My father recommended him for full technician training. Her fingers touched the signature once, not sentimentally, but like a witness. That recommendation was buried after my father died. Preston's face drained of certainty. You can't prove I buried anything. No, Evelyn said. But I can prove what you did yesterday. She looked toward the board chair above the glass wall, then at the donors, then at the technicians who had laughed too early and looked away too late. The suspension notice is void. The incident report is withdrawn. The leaked video was incomplete and misleading. Mr. Brooks did not interfere with my vehicle. He warned us before this company turned a $6 problem into a very expensive lie. No one clapped. That would have made it cheaper. Instead, people stood in the weight of what had been said. Preston tried one final door. Evelyn, think about the auction. The donors. The partnership. She looked at him then, fully. I am. She removed the evidence tag from Caleb's tin box herself, tearing the paper slowly enough for the sound to carry. Partnerships that require silence are not partnerships. The board chair came down fast after that. His voice was low, angry, polished for public use. This should have been handled privately. Evelyn did not lower her eyes. It was handled privately. That's how we got here. Across town, Caleb was sitting in his truck outside the school with Naomi beside him, the heater rattling, both of them sharing fries from a paper bag because dinner at home would be late and soup reheated twice only forgave a man so much. His phone rang. He looked at the screen and almost let it pass. Evelyn Carter. Naomi glanced over. Is that the fancy car lady? Caleb exhaled. Yes. Are you in trouble again? He answered before the question could settle too deep. Evelyn's voice came through softer than he expected, but not small. Mr. Brooks, your suspension has been voided. Your property is safe. The footage has been shown in full. Publicly. Caleb watched rain slide down the windshield. A yellow school flyer clung wetly to the fence beyond the parking lot. Good, he said. One word. Not grateful. Not cruel. Just steady. Evelyn swallowed on the other end. I was wrong to sign before I knew enough. Caleb did not rush to rescue her from the discomfort. Naomi stopped eating, watching his face. Evelyn continued, and this time her voice had to cross something inside her to get out. I also returned your name to my father's file. The part he saw in you should not have been buried. Caleb's hand stilled on the steering wheel. That touched a place he had not offered her. Not the job. Not the car. His name. Naomi leaned closer and whispered, did she find Grandpa's box? Caleb closed his eyes briefly. The question traveled through the phone's silence, small and clear. Evelyn heard it. So did Marin, standing beside the workbench with the tin box in both hands. Evelyn looked down at the faded handwriting inside the lid. Listen before you turn. Yes, Evelyn said, though the answer was not hers to give. And I would like to bring it back. Caleb opened his eyes. His voice remained calm, but the line between them became clear. Returning what's mine is not a favor. Evelyn nodded even though he could not see her. No, she said. It's the beginning of being right. There was a silence then. Not empty. Not forgiven. Just honest. In the truck, Naomi looked from her father to the rain and back again. Daddy, she whispered, if she brings it back, does that mean she learned to listen? Caleb looked at the wet windshield, at the broken edge of Saturn in Naomi's lap, at the phone holding Evelyn's quiet breath. Maybe, he said. But listening is only the first repair. On the other end, Evelyn stood in the bright showroom with every powerful person watching her wait for an answer she could not buy. Caleb did not give it yet. He only said, bring the box to the school. Then he ended the call, leaving Evelyn holding the silence like something fragile enough to deserve both hands. Evelyn arrived at the school with no assistant, no driver, and no speech prepared. The rain had stopped. Water still clung to the chain-link fence in tiny beads, catching the weak evening light like something trying to become beautiful after a hard day. Her car, not the Lamborghini, idled quietly at the curb. In both hands, she carried Caleb's tin box. No evidence tag. No plastic bag. No corporate seal. Just the old dented metal, cleaned carefully but not polished into something it was never meant to be. Caleb stood beside the old truck with Naomi next to him, her purple backpack hanging from one shoulder and her bent cardboard solar system held under one arm. He did not step forward when Evelyn approached. He waited. That, too, was a kind of boundary. Evelyn stopped a few feet away and looked first at Naomi, then at Caleb. I brought it back myself, she said. Caleb's eyes moved to the box. His face stayed calm, but Naomi's did not. She reached for it, then stopped and looked up at her father for permission. Caleb nodded. Naomi took the tin box with both hands, as if it were heavier than metal. She opened the lid, checked the faded handwriting inside, and exhaled. It's really Grandpa's. Evelyn heard the word and understood, finally, that the thing her company had tagged and held was not a tool. Not just a tool. It was inheritance. A small altar to a man who had taught another man to listen before turning anything too hard. Evelyn's throat tightened, but she did not make a performance of it. I was wrong, she said. No rush. No polished apology. And I let procedure make my wrong look official. Caleb watched her in the fading light. Procedure didn't sign your name. The words were quiet. They were not cruel. That made them stay. Evelyn nodded once, accepting the weight without trying to set it down. No. I did. Naomi looked between them, sensing that adults sometimes fix things without touching tools. Evelyn turned back to Caleb. Your suspension is removed. Your wages for today will be paid. Preston is under formal investigation, and the full video has been sent to everyone who received the edited one. She paused. But I know none of that gives you back the science fair. Caleb looked toward the school doors, where the hallway lights glowed softer now that the building was almost empty. No, he said. It doesn't. Evelyn lowered her gaze. This was the part money usually tried to jump over. Caleb did not let it. For a moment, all three of them stood in the quiet after consequences. Then Naomi opened the tin box again and lifted the small brass connector with careful fingers. Daddy, she said, this is the $6 piece, right? Caleb almost smiled. Something like that. Evelyn looked at it, remembering the Porsche, the footage, the room full of people, the way a tiny part had exposed a much larger failure. Naomi held it up to the evening light. Small things matter if somebody knows where they go. The sentence made Evelyn still. Caleb looked at his daughter with the kind of pride that did not need an audience. Yes, ma'am, he said softly. They do. The next morning, the Porsche was repaired properly. Caleb did not take the Lamborghini. He did not ask for a title, a favor, or a chair near power. He accepted a fair contract to inspect the vehicle independently, on paper, with terms he read twice and changed once. Evelyn let him. No argument. No offense. She stood beside the workbench and listened as he explained the sensor thread, the load delay, the small warning everyone had tried to turn into a large invoice. Not because she suddenly understood engines. Because she was learning to understand respect. Later that week, Naomi's science teacher called. One student had dropped out. A table had opened. Caleb stayed up past midnight helping Naomi rebuild Saturn with fishing line, glue, and patience. At dawn, the apartment smelled of hot coffee instead of cold worry. The purple backpack sat by the door, zipped properly for once. The tin box rested on the kitchen table where it belonged, beside the permission slip stamped accepted. When Evelyn came by the school after the fair, she did not arrive with cameras or flowers. She stood at the back of the hallway in a plain coat, holding 2 cups of coffee, waiting until Naomi finished explaining her planets to a judge. Caleb saw her and walked over slowly. You didn't have to come, he said. Evelyn handed him 1 cup. I know. That was all. No grand confession. No fairy tale ending. Just a woman who had learned that showing up quietly could mean more than arriving loudly. Caleb accepted the coffee. Their hands did not linger. Their silence did. Naomi waved from her table, smiling wide enough to make the whole hallway warmer. Outside, the old truck started on the second turn, steady and familiar. Evelyn watched Caleb place the tin box on the passenger seat before helping Naomi climb in with her solar system. Nothing about him looked richer. Nothing about him looked smaller. He had not raised his voice. He had not taken the car. He had not needed the room to clap. He had simply kept his promise as far as the world allowed, then taught the world to make more room for the truth. As the truck pulled away beneath a pale morning sky, Evelyn stood with her coffee cooling in her hand and understood the lesson at last. Dignity does not need a spotlight, and kindness is still a revolution when it arrives quietly.